My humble obeisances to you all. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for joining His Holiness Candramauli Swami Maharaj's daily class. Hare Krishna Maharaj, my humble obeisances to you. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Maharaj, are we continuing today Srimad Bhagavatam or?
Yeah.
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you so much. Today, so we are continuing with our Srimad Bhagavatam study of second canto, chapter number 6, Purusha Sukta confirmed. And today's verse is number 20. Yes, I'll share my screen again. Yeah, you can please take over.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Padaistrayo Bhahischasnan Aprajanamya Asrayam. Antastri lokas tva paro grihamedo brihad vrataha. The spiritual world, which consists of 3/4 of the Lord's energy, is situated beyond this material world. It is especially meant for those who are never be reborn. Others who are attached to family life, who do not strictly follow celibacy vows, must live within the 3 material worlds. The climax of the system of Varnashrama or Sanatana Dharma is clearly expressed here in this particular verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. The highest benefit that one can be awarded to a human being is to train him to be detached from sex life, particularly because it is only due to sex indulgence that the conditioned life of material existence continues birth after birth. Human civilization in which there is no control of sex life is a 4th-class civilization because in such an atmosphere, there is no liberation of the soul encaged in the material body. Birth, death, old age, disease are related to the material body, and they have nothing to do with the spirit soul. But as long as the bodily attachment for sensual enjoyment is encouraged, the individual soul is forced to continue the repetition of birth and death on account of the material body, which is compared to garments subjected to the laws of deterioration. In order to award the highest benefit of human life, the Varnashram system trains the followers to adopt the vow of celibacy, beginning from the order of brahmachari. Brahmachari life is for students who are educated to follow strictly the vows of celibacy. Youngsters who have no taste of sex life can easily follow the vow of celibacy, and once fixed in the principles of such life, one can very easily continue to the highest perfectional stage, attaining to the kingdom of the 3/4 energy of the Lord. It is also explained that in the cosmos, the 3/4 energy of the Lord, there is neither death nor fear, and one is full of the blissful life of happiness and knowledge. A householder attached to family life can easily give up such life of sex indulgence if he has been trained in the principles of the life of brahmacharya. A householder is recommended to quit home at the end of 50 years, pancho surdham nam vrajet, and live in the life of a forest. Then, being fully detached from family affection, he may accept the order of renunciation as a sannyasi, fully engaged in the service of the Lord. Any form of religious principle in which the followers are trained to pursue the vow of celibacy is good for the human being because only those who are trained in that way can end the miserable life of material existence. The principles of nirvana, as recommended by Lord Buddha, are also meant for ending the miserable life of material existence. And this process, in the highest degree, is recommended here in the Srimad Bhagavatam with clear perception of ideal perfection, although basically there is no difference between the processes of Buddhists, Sankarites, and Vaishnavites. For promotion to the highest status of perfection, namely freedom from birth and death, anxiety, and fearfulness, not one of these processes allow the followers to break the vow of celibacy. The householders and persons who have deliberately broken the vow of celibacy cannot enter into the kingdom of deathlessness. The pious householders, or the fallen yogis of the fallen transcendentalists, can be promoted to the higher planets in the material world, which is 1/4 of the energy of the Lord, but they will fail to enter into the kingdom of deathlessness. Vratas are those who have broken the vow of celibacy. The Vanaprasthas, or those retired from family life, and the sannyasis, or the renounced persons, cannot break the vow of celibacy if they want success in the process. Brahmacharyas, Vanaprasthas, and sannyasis do not intend to take rebirth, aprajja, nor are they meant for secretly indulging in sex life. Such a fall down by the spiritualists may be compensated by another chance for human life in good families of learned Brahmins or rich merchants for another term of elevation. But the best thing is to attain the highest perfection of deathlessness as soon as the human form of life is attained. Otherwise, the whole policy of human life will prove to be a failure. Lord Chaitanya was very strict in advising his followers in the matter of celibacy. One of his personal attendants, Jyotir Haridas, was severely punished by Lord Chaitanya because of his failure to observe the vow of celibacy. For a transcendentalist, therefore, who wants all to be promoted to the kingdom beyond material misery, it is worse than suicide to deliberately indulge in sex life, especially in the renounced order of life. Sex life in the renounced order of life is the most perverted form of religious life, and such a misguided person can only be saved if by chance he meets a pure devotee. Magyantimirandasya Ganajana Salakaya Chaksun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimakti Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaurvani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavari Pastyatya De Satarine Vanshako Patarubhischa Kripa Sindhu Ve Bachapatitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namaho Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So it's explained in the Shastras in the 5th canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, that the pure spirit soul is not meant for taking birth. To take birth is an anomaly for the soul. But because the soul deviates from his pure position in the spiritual world, falls to the material world, and has to accept an unnatural position of having a material body. Because of the desire to enjoy separately from the Lord, one is given a material body to fulfill that inordinate desire. And that is why the material world is here. It's actually a place of punishment, as the living entity belongs in the kingdom of deathlessness with the Lord in eternal loving service with the Lord in a variety of ways. But because of this misuse of their independent nature, they choose something which is contrary to their best interests. Either it happens because of wanting to experiment with the material world, or because they feel that they want to be also the center of attraction in the spiritual world. And so the living entity falls to the material world to take up a position which is contrary to their nature. And so the material world is like a prison house. It's called the Maitunya Agra. Agra means shackles, and Maitunya means sex. The shackles of sex life. So the whole material world evolves and revolves around this principle of sense gratification, which is epitomized by sex life. And therefore, one is entrapped, Maya Labase, Gacho Base, Gacho Ho Bubu Dubai, life after life after life, taking birth and dying, sometimes in the higher realms of the material energy, the abode of the demigods, sometimes in the lower realms where people are so downtrodden they can't even begin to understand that they are a spiritual being. And sometimes in the middle range or the middle planetary systems, this is called Bhuvaloka, where the Earth planet exists, and the living entities are somewhat in between spiritual and material, or higher and lower. And so any place in the material world, just like if you go to jail, you can be put into solitary confinement where you have practically no independence, no movement, no freedom. You can also be put in mainstream jail where you're like every other prisoner, where you get to eat, sleep, you have your own cell. You also may have a few facilities in the cell, like a television, or you may also go outside of your cell and do exercises in the outdoors area of the prison. That's called mainstream, normal prisoner. Or you might be in the prison and have shown that you are such an exceptional prisoner in terms of your behavior. You're given some responsibility in the prison where you may also be in charge of other prisoners. So in any case, you're still in the prison. That's the point. So we a privileged prisoner, normal prisoner, or a marginalized prisoner. But still, prison is there. So the material world is what it is. It's called, we're locked up in this. And locked up is this desire to enjoy sex life, which is the essence of material existence. People in the material world will work very hard to facilitate and to gather things that will facilitate their relationships with the opposite sex, which culminates ultimately in the so-called happiness of sex life. When Prabhupada was here, he was meeting different types of people. This was in the very beginning of his preaching in the West. And there was one rock and roll group called the Fugs, F-U-G-S, Fugs. And they were quite, we say, abominable personalities. There were many rock and roll groups that were quite, what we say, low class. And they had met Prabhupada for some reason. And Prabhupada was telling them, and in the spiritual world, there's no sex life. And they said, no sex life? Well, what is the purpose of life then? Better to die than to live without sex life. So that was their response. So such response is somewhat normal for people in the material world because people will not work in so many different ways to facilitate their material arrangements so they can optimize their sex life. The Bhagavatam talks about sex life in different situations. The animals, they do it in the streets. Ordinary persons, they do it in the homes. And privileged persons, they may do it in the palace with all kinds of lavish arrangements around them. But the taste is the same. It's like if you take food and you put it in a metal pot, you put it in the silver pot, or you put it in the golden pot, the food is the same, although the pots may appear to be different. So the pleasure of sex life is not much different for the dog, for the man, and for even for the demigod. It is all the same. There's one story where one leper, he was married, he had a very chaste and faithful wife who took care of him very nicely. So in the town where the leper lived, there was one very famous prostitute. So this leper had heard about her and he wanted to take the opportunity. But she was very expensive. So he could not afford. So his wife, being very chaste and faithful, she knew the desire of her husband. And so she went to the prostitute and start serving the prostitute in so many different ways in order to get the favor of the prostitute. And the prostitute was very pleased by that. And she said, all right, bring your husband. So the husband was allowed to come and meet the prostitute. Now, she devised a little plot to teach the husband a lesson. She cooked food as a dinner when he first arrived, and she put some of the food on a leaf plate, some of the food on a metal plate, and some of the food on the golden plate. And so it was the same food on all three plates, and she served them in that way. So he's thinking, she's giving me the same food on three different kinds of plates. What is this? So he got curious. He said to the prostitute, why? She said to him, go home. You have a nice wife. It's all the same. It's all the same. So he got enlightened by her arrangement and he went home. So this was an example. This was some story from the Shastras that those who think that it's better in one way or another, the dog is doing it, the cockroach is doing it, the flies do it, and everyone else does it. And everyone thinks this is the perfection of happiness. And therefore, but what is the results? Sometimes it causes not sometimes, all the time, it causes great stress upon the living being. One has to accept from Mituna Bhava Meta. There is that verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the 5th canto. Pumsam striya mituni bhava metan vayoritam vidayante ahur ato griha kshetra sutapta vitayar janasamoham yam aham mameti. And this verse spoken by the Lord himself, Rishabdev, says, the attraction between male and female is the basic misconception of human form, of material life. Based on this misconception, the hearts of the male and female are tied together, and from that comes home, wealth, children, relatives, uh, so many other things, material amenities. So soon that desire for sex life expands itself into so many forms of material attachment. Just like the word stri, S-T-R-I, means to expand. And stri also refers to woman. Now, when we say woman, we refer to not only the female gender, but woman means opposite sex. So for a man, woman is woman, and for a woman, man is woman. That is how the Shastras speak. And so this expansion comes by way of this attachment, and pretty soon the entanglement material energy. So many things come, and one has to work their whole life just for this little bit of pleasure, which is available in any species of life. And so this is the illusion, or the so-called, it's called Maya Sukhaya. Sukha means happiness, and Maya means illusionary. The illusion of happiness is epitomized by this idea of sex life, which brings about so many material entanglements that one can't even see themselves out of that entanglement. But one who takes up devotional service and understands that the goal of life is not to make a nice arrangement in this material world to enjoy the senses, but to restrict the senses and to engage the senses in the service of the Lord. And so the mind is the sense, it's the king of all senses. And then we have the five senses, the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, and the sense of touch. And then we have the five working senses, which are the arms, the legs, the genitals, and the anus. These are the five working senses. Altogether, there's 11 senses, including the mind. And then you have the sense objects, or those connections by which the senses go to. So from sight, there is, from the desire for the eyes to enjoy, there is sight, sound, like that. And so one who engages these senses, not in the objects of the senses, there's that verse from the Bhagavad Gita. What is it? Trying to think of that verse. We'll turn to it later. It's in the Bhagavad Gita. But one who engages themselves in these objects of the senses simply suffers because sense objects cannot satisfy a living entity. The pleasure that one gets from sense gratification, which is epitomized by sex life, is flickering and temporary and leads to further entanglement in the activities of sense enjoyment. So every time you engage in sense gratification, you get some relief from the desire to fulfill that. In other words, you feel some relief, but it attaches one to the activity, and one is inclined to do it more and more. And for every sense object, there is the opposite. There is some relief and there is some entanglement, which leads to more and more kinds of suffering. So this is the material world is designed that the living entity cannot find lasting pleasure in this material world. And the temporary pleasure they do get is simply a relief from the pain that they suffer of trying to enjoy this material world. So it goes on like that. And then Mayravase, Kacho Base, Kacho Ho Buvudu, life after life after life, Kardanam Guna Sangasyo, Sadasat Joni, which simply leads to more birth and death and various sufferings that come with having a material body, such as the miseries of the body, miseries of the mind. Just like right now, there are, I know two devotees right now who are about to die. They're both on their deathbeds, undergoing great amounts of physical suffering due to the miseries of the material body in the form of disease. And so their life is simply ending and they're departing in a very horrific way. The suffering is tremendous. Although they're devotees, still they are having to undergo so much physical pain or some suffering. So death, when death comes along, it's not always pleasant. One cannot say, well, I want to die this way. I want to die that way. I want to go to sleep at night and then not wake up. That way I can have a very peaceful death. There are people who plan that when I die, I can die very nicely. But death is never nice because the soul is dragged out of the body and forced to again enter another body in a womb of another mother to begin the whole process of life again, and not knowing what type of body one will get, because no one can plan what type of body they will get in the next life. That's under the control of the material energy 100%. But one can free themselves from this whole cycle of birth and death and the various sufferings that come with having a material body, simply by taking to the process of devotional service. And here it mentions the different ashrams. So one begins their ashram in a celibate ashram, such as brahmachari, or the counterpart, which is called brahmacharini. They live in the temple, or they live under the guidance of the spiritual master, and they work in that way. They're not allowed to associate with the opposite sex for the purpose of sense gratification. And they learn the Shastras. They engage in various activities, which are called devotional service. Like that, they read the books, they study, they understand their position and their identity as a spiritual being. And after so many years, they're giving the opportunity whether they want to continue in that ashram or move to the grihastha ashram, married life, where they can take up a husband or wife and then have children. But for the propagation of children, there is restrictions that one can only have sex life with the wife once a month at a particular time when the wife is the most fertile, when it's most conducive for procreation. If there is no procreation or on that, or no conception on that sex life, they have to wait to the next month and try again. And once there is conception, then there is no sex life for the next 16 months while the woman is pregnant, and 6 months after, even 8 months after the woman has given birth. So these are all restrictions just to allow for this concessionary thing for certain living entities who want to find some temporary pleasure in this material world and still propagate Krishna consciousness. So if they carefully follow the restrictive rules and regulations in the ashram of Grihastha, they can live a happy life, also have children, and then also make progress towards the Gola life. But as they get older, when the children are grown up, and then they have their own husbands and wife and get married, they detach themselves from that relationship and then the wife goes to the holy places and finishes her life serving the deity there in complete devotion. And the man can take sannyas, or he can also go to a holy place and live there and serve the deity there to the rest of his life. So all of these are part of the Vedic scheme by which one can detach themselves from this desire for sex life. Those who live in the ashrama of brahmachari or brahmacharini, or even vanaprastha, retired life, and sannyas life, they have no opportunities for sex life, and therefore then they can make nice progress and fulfill their desire for full consciousness of the Supreme Lord in devotion. So the whole scheme is meant to detach one from this desire to enjoy, which is epitomized by sex life. When Prabhupada was here, there was one devotee from New York, this was in the very early days, who was talking to Prabhupada about sex life, and he said to Prabhupada, my teacher, who was a Freudian, there's Sigmund Freud, he wrote many books about sex life, and he said that actually every activity that the living being performs in this age is either gross or subtle sex life, either leading to or actually performing sex life. And Prabhupada acknowledged that, yes, this is correct. This whole world is simply what we say evolving or devolving, you might say, based on this desire to enjoy in this way. And so if one can break that attachment and engage in devotional service, because the power of devotional service gives you a higher taste. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Visayam vinivartante nirharasya dehinam vaso vyarjam vaso pyaspya param drisva nivartante. That getting a higher taste, one can give up the lower taste. And without getting a higher taste, one cannot easily give up the lower taste. The lower taste is material happiness. The higher taste is real happiness. That's the basis of the soul's nature when it comes in contact with the Supreme Soul in loving devotional service, which expands itself to unlimited levels of happiness, anandambu divardhanam, unlimited happiness in the soul's existence that one can experience when they serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead in devotion. So this is the only way out of this entanglement. Otherwise, one is forced life after life after life after life after life to come back in different species of life until they actually take up pure devotional service and become successful by purifying all their desires and going back home, back to Godhead. Now, Prabhupada says here, those who perform devotional service but fall short of perfection, suchinam simbatam gehe yoga brasta vajayate, they come back in families that are pious, devotional, or sometimes very wealthy families. This is a concession that they get where they can pick up in their next life and continue on to perfection. So Prabhupada said many of the children that take birth in our movement, they were devotees in their previous lives, and now they're just coming back to finishing up their life. I was talking to one of my god sisters, this was many years ago, and she was telling me how she had this little girl, and from the time the girl could walk, she was always getting hurt, falling down, and almost dying. And this was going on continuously. And it was very difficult if they left that girl alone, even for a little while. She would do something that was harmful to herself. Finally, when she was 3 years old, she was at the Detroit Temple in Detroit, Michigan, and they have a pool, a swimming pool there. And this was John Mastami Day. And this little girl wandered away from the care of her elders. Nobody even noted it. And she fell into the pool, and that was the last. So her mother spent about 2 hours talking to me, describing her whole life of this girl. And she concluded by saying, this girl came into as my child because she was a great soul in a previous life. Therefore, she had only some little tiny bit of karma left. And therefore, she stayed for 3 years, finished up her karma, and then left her body and obviously went back to the spiritual world. So there are many situations like that where people come into this world. They may have very little karma left, and then eventually they live short lives and they finish up and then they go back to the spiritual world. So the goal is to get out of this material entanglement. Otherwise, the soul stays in its unnatural position of taking birth and dying life after life after life in different species of life, always trying to somehow or other find some kind of temporary happiness based on the body, the minds, and the senses, which centers around this desire for sex enjoyment, which is the shackles. And there are different types of shackles that you can put chains on a person. There are iron chains, there are silver chains, there are golden chains, but chains are chains. They shackle a person. So even though a person may be very nicely placed materially, still they're wearing the chains of sex life, which keeps them rotating in this material world, life after life after life. So, therefore, the purpose of human life, Tato Brahma Jigyasa, is to get out of this entanglement, to go back home, back to Godhead, and enjoy eternally in loving transcendental happiness with the Supreme Personality of Godhead in a variety of ways. And the spiritual world, as it says here, is 3/4 of the manifestation of existence. This material world, which comprises millions of planets in 3 different spheres of existence, 14 planetary systems, is so huge that one can't even calculate how big it is. There's no calculation. And billions, trillions, quadrillions of living entities are entangled in this material energy. But beyond that, there's a 3/4 existence, which is the spiritual world, where the majority of living entities never fall to the material world. That is actually the place where all living beings belong, in the spiritual world. And so the purpose of life is to finish up our business in this material world by getting detached from all material activities and engaged in all spiritual activities, and again attain to our perfectional stage of eternal happiness, knowledge, and transcendental bliss, or eternal happiness, Sat Chit Ananda, and Vigraha. Just like we have a form in this material world in different ways, there are so many forms, there are 8,400,000 species of life, which make up male and female forms in different species. But the spiritual world also, we have a form, and that form is designed to serve Krishna in that particular way, which is the essence of our activity in the spiritual world. Although one has a spiritual form in the spiritual world, one can change their form and serve Krishna in different ways. And that is the privilege of the spirit. The spiritual energy can be changed in such a way that one can facilitate service to the Lord in many, many different ways. But one is most happy in their own transcendental form. So one should think, well, if this is the goal and this material world is simply a jail, then let me get out of it. So even if it takes one life or maybe two, utmost three of devotional service, all of that time and energy ultimately is money in the bank, which matures in the form of the ultimate treasure, which is the spiritual existence. So one should not think it's so difficult to get out of this material world. It is, it's difficult in one sense. But if one follows the process and develops enthusiasm for serving the Lord and somehow tolerates the difficulties that one may encounter by living in this world and becomes patient, depends on the mercy of the Lord, and gradually they'll reach the stage of perfection. Anyone who starts devotional service will eventually come to the stage of perfection. Because once you start, you're planting the seed. And you may fall down from devotional service, but because you've planted some seed, you'll get a chance in the next life to pick it up and begin again. So it's guaranteed success, but we don't want to wait for 2 or 3 lives. Prabhupada said, if you're really determined, you can do it in one life. And that the essence of that is to glorify the Lord by chanting his holy name and serving and associating with devotees who do the same thing. And Lord Chaitanya has made the process so nice that it becomes susukham, not just happy, but very happy. Singing, dancing, eating, reading nice books, discussing philosophy, and ultimately feeling the pleasure of the presence of Krishna through all of these activities, and ultimately achieving his lotus feet eternally in devotional service. That's guaranteed for one who begins. But we don't want to waste many lives going through the whole struggle. We can do it in one life if one is determined. It takes determination to do it in one life, but it can be done. And there are many examples like that. And so the Lord is very merciful. When he sees the devotee is sincere and serious in executing devotional service, as Prabhupada said, when the Lord sees, oh, this person really wants me, and Krishna really helps that person achieve his success in life, the shelter of his lotus feet. He helps. And when he helps, when Krishna jumps in and helps, then the whole process becomes very quick. But you have to be sincere in order to get Krishna's full mercy. His mercy is available on any level of spiritual practice, but when we become fully determined that I will attain the goal of life, love of God, I will achieve the perfection by going back home, back to Godhead. And one acts accordingly, then the whole process becomes simple, fast, easy. What was Dhruva Maharaja's qualification? He simply heard from his mother that if you want to fulfill your desire in this world, you go and you worship the Lord within the forest. He had a desire to have a kingdom greater than his father, who was the king of the world, Uttanapana, his grandfather, Swayambhuva Manu, who was the king of the universe, and his great-grandfather, Lord Brahma, who is the chief of all kings throughout the universe. He wanted a kingdom better than Lord Brahma, and there was no kingdom available. But because he was so determined, somehow the Lord appeared to him, fulfilled his desire, and ultimately he achieved perfection and went back home, back to Godhead. And while he was leaving the material world, because it mentions that when one becomes fully Krishna conscious, then the Lord sends a flower airplane with his personal associates on there, and they escort the soul back to the spiritual world. So when the airplane came from him, he was about to get into the airplane. And then he said to the inhabitants, I want my mother to come also, because my mother was the one who directed me in my success in becoming fully God conscious. So they said, Dhruva, just look to your left. And he did. His mother was getting into another airplane, and she also made it back to Godhead. What was her qualification? She made her son a pure devotee. And because of that, she also got the full mercy of the Lord. So the Lord is very kind, and he's always very eager to take the soul out of this entanglement of material. And so this desire for sex life is such a petty, small, little, insignificant form of attachment. But in the material world, it seems like it's the greatest thing that people can, aspire for. But comparatively speaking, as Jamunacharya, the great Jamunacharya, the spiritual master of Ramanujacharya, he was a king and he was enjoying royal happiness. He was a devotee in his early life, won a kingdom by debate, became a king, and became degraded. The spiritual master came to him and somehow or other convinced him to come back to spiritual life. It's a long story. And he did. And now he says, when I think of sex life, my lips curl in disgust and I want to spit upon it. In other words, when he thinks about the happiness that so-called people chase after in the form of sex life, he gets disgusted because he's tasting something much higher, much better, and ultimately much more beneficial. So we shouldn't allow these little material desires, which are like ephemeral clouds of smoke that come into our life and disappear as fast as they come in, to keep us attached to this entanglement of the material world. So one should be focused. Let me ultimately develop my love for Krishna and go back home, back to God. Whatever I have to do to achieve that, let it happen. And that's the devotee. Then when Krishna sees that, hears that, he jumps into gear. He gives mercy to that soul, and that soul will gradually come to the perfectional stage of life. Okay. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Maharaj, thank you so much. Such a wonderful class, very powerful class, showing us the reality and what is the goal of our life. Thank you so much, Maharaj. Dear devotees, any questions or comments or realizations, you can please go ahead now. Please turn on your cameras, if possible. Yeah, Krishna Kaviraj Prabhu, please go ahead.
Thank you, Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to you, Guru Maharaj, all glories to all of the Vaishnavas. Guru Maharaj, I did not understand a point that you were making about how any activity in the material realm comes under the banner of, or I'm not sure how to phrase it, comes under the banner of sex activity or sex desire. Whereas how is that link made?
Well, have you studied Sigmund Freud?
No. Maybe I did a long time ago, but I don't remember.
Well, that's his philosophy. Prabhupada also acknowledged that he was correct, because the activities of material life are meant for bringing one to a platform of enjoying the senses. And therefore, as one tries to enjoy the senses, one never feels satisfied in that. So the ultimate principle of sense enjoyment manifests itself in sex life. So therefore, ultimately, all of the activities of material life culminate around this desire to achieve and to enjoy sex life. And that's why marriage is there, to regulate that desire in a way that it doesn't cause the living entity to get entangled, but to regulate it and to use it for bringing children into the world, which is actually why it's designed in that way. And that way one can fulfill that desire in a spiritual way, or we might say in a religious way, and then gradually detach themselves from that in the later part of life, when the children are grown up and then the husband and wife separate, and then they also finish their life in devotional service. So married life is concessionary, but it's most living entities in the material world require that, because to give up sex life is very difficult because everything centers around that idea of enjoyment. There is
Okay, so
subtle
it's
sex, there is gross sex, there's subtle sex, but it's all the same in the sense that one leads to the other, and the other, and gross sex life entangles one in various types of sufferings. You can see where's the sufferings in this world. It's all based on sex life. You can connect every activity ultimately for the desire for that pleasure. So it takes a little philosophical understanding, but if you read the Shastras and you also understand the principle, you'll see that if there was no sex life in this material world, people wouldn't work. They wouldn't do anything. There would be no purpose. But the real purpose is, Atatu Brahma Jigyasa, to become self-realized. But what's the purpose of material life? Is to enjoy the senses. And the epitome of that enjoyment, so-called enjoyment, is sex life.
okay.
Are you ready to give up your family and join the ashram and chant Hare Krishna and take sannyas?
Uh,
You don't have to answer that because it's a public forum.
mm,
So, but think about it. If you are, then you can make very fast progress. But you can make slow progress where you are now, but still, progress has to be made.
thank you, Maharaj.
You didn't say that with such enthusiasm, but anyway, I didn't expect it either.
Mhm. Well, yeah, it was interesting, like thinking of everything relating to that. But you're coming from the angle about it being for sense enjoyment, where I was thinking like you go for a walk, how's that related to that? I guess it's what's your purpose behind what you're doing it? You're just going to get some exercise because you really need it.
You want to maintain the body so you can enjoy the body.
I see.
So-called enjoyment.
Mm,
Uh, I don't recommend you read Sigmund Freud, and I don't recommend anybody read Sigmund Freud. But his whole idea was, I mean, he took it a little beyond the norm. But ultimately, the Shastras also emphasize the same principle he talked about in an organized way, that ultimately the purpose of life is happiness, and the purpose of material life is to find happiness through the senses, the mind, and the intelligence. And the epitome of that happiness manifests itself in sex life. I have a beautiful poem. Of course, I don't have it with me. It's in a hard copy. It's in my ashram in Croatia, and it's called, what is it called? Uh, The Happiness of Sex Life. When I get back there, remind me, I'll read it to you. It's quite entertaining the way it's written. It's written by one devotee who lives in New Vrindavan. He wrote it.
Okay. It
Anyway,
sounds scary. We have to be very careful about what we're doing at every moment of every day.
yeah. You know, okay, I can tell you, all right, you go live. There's one Grecian island. I forget where it is, somewhere in the Grecian area, where there's monks there, and the island is only inhabited by men. There's no women allowed on that island. It's there today. So you can go there and live there.
But then we hear about men in prison where there's only men. They still find a way to find some perverted sex enjoyment.
Right, because the desire is there. Even if you take away the object, the desire remains. As long as the desire is there, although the object is not there to enjoy, just like I could give you the example. There was one story, King Akbar, famous King Akbar. He had one servant called, what was his name? Gopal. I think his name is Gopal or Birbal. Birbal and Akbar. So Akbar says to Birbal, I think this sex desire, when one gets old, one loses the desire for sex. Birbal says, nope, that's not true. Really? Yes. Are you serious? Yeah. Make an experiment, he said to Akbar. You have a very devoted follower in your kingdom. He's a very elderly man. He's on his deathbed. He's about to die. He's one of your favorite. He lives simply because he honors you very much. You come and see him tomorrow. He's in this bed, and you bring your daughter, your young daughter, who's very beautiful. You both go in the room together. And so they're there. And then Birbal says to Akbar, when you walk in the room, watch the eyes of the man when you walk in. So Akbar walks in with his daughter. Immediately, this old man, he can't even move. He's sick. He's old. His sensors are not even working. Immediately, his eyes went to the girl. Now, so that desire never leaves unless one becomes Krishna conscious or spiritual consciousness. So don't think old age is a solution for it. It's not. Prabhupada talks about how these old men in different countries, they're so old, they're like 60s, 70s, maybe even older. They go to these nightclubs. They pay big money to see all of these young girls there. That's a famous entertainment, especially in France and other places. So that desire is still very strong, unless it is replaced by spiritual desire or Krishna consciousness. So only love of Krishna or affection towards Krishna can divert the desire away from the material to the spiritual. And then one's natural loving propensity will be towards Krishna. not in a licentious or a materialistic way, but in a natural, loving way to serve the Lord and to actually experience the happiness of serving the Lord. And when that becomes perfect, and one goes back home, back to Godhead. And I use the example of Jamunacharya, who went through life enjoying sex life in the position of a king, but then when he gave it all up and became fully God conscious, he gets disgusted when he thinks about it. So that disgusting mentality is there. Those who are on higher elevated principles, they think, oh, what is this sex life? It's just so it's so puny. It doesn't mean they don't have affection for other people, but their affection is not on the bodily platform. It's on the spiritual platform. There's affection on the spiritual platform, which is even stronger than the affection on the material platform, because spiritual affection is selfless, whereas material affection is motivated by self-interest. I become connected with someone because they can fulfill my desires for happiness. But spiritually, if I love someone, I don't think about how happy I'm going to be when I connect with them or serve them. I just want to make them happy. That's all. And that happiness that they experience is my happiness. That's love. And that's on the spiritual platform. You find it very rarely on the material platform. And if it is on the material platform, it's very flickering. It doesn't remain constant. Who said there's people who have sex life as much as they can possibly do. They're destroying their health, that's for sure. They're shortening their lives. They're weakening their stamina because of that. And they're miserable. They're miserable. Why? Because they think that this is happiness. And after they engage into it, they feel some temporary relief of the desire, but at the same time, they don't feel satisfied or happy. Therefore, they think, I just have to keep trying in different ways. And so they continue on in the same way. And that's all they know. That's material life. To enjoy the senses as much as possible. And when it becomes so bad, then people become suicidal. They want to kill their own selves because they can't enjoy anymore. Or they become violent towards other people, which is an expression of sex desire in a very dangerous way, causing harm to others. So they want to kill or hurt others, and they get pleasure by doing that. It's a perverted form of sex desire. That's all it is. So when you analyze things according to Shastra, according to Guru, you'll see everything centers around this so-called pleasure. But real pleasure is Tato Brahma Jigyasa, or spiritual pleasure, pleasure of the soul.
Wow, that sounds sad, Guru Maharaj. Sounds like a situation where everyone is frantically banging their heads against the wall, or they're banging other people's heads against the wall, and nobody's enjoying anything.
Yeah, it's called exploitation. Material world is to exploit another person for one's own personal interest. And that's why relationships don't last, or they become very difficult, because everything is based on exploiting the opposite party for something that they can gain. But love is nothing, there's nothing exploitative about love. It's all about giving for the pleasure of others, for the benefit of others also. And that's spiritual. sometimes you see it in the material world, but it's flickering and comes and goes. But Prabhupada said, you'll see it in a mother's love for her children. The mother's love for her little baby is selfless because the baby can't reciprocate, but the mother keeps giving, giving, giving because she loves her child, because the child came from her body. And that maternal nature expands itself in caring and compassion for that child. And so Prabhupada said the closest thing you find for real love in the material world is the love of a mother for her child. But then Prabhupada says, also the mother will think, if I can take care of this child and grow it up very nicely and he can get a good job, and then he can give me some money and support me in my old age. So there's some selfishness in there too.
Thank you.
So yeah, Srimati,
Yes,
you're in
Maharaj.
charge.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you so much. Such a detailed explanation. And yeah, thank you.
I just repeat the Shastras and Prabhupada. I don't have any knowledge.
Oh, Maharaj. Yeah. Sridevi Mataji, you want to go ahead?
Thank you, Srimati. Dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Prabhupada. Guru Maharaj, right in the beginning of the class, you mentioned something that struck me as really important to understand. You said, right now, as I speak, two devotees are giving up their bodies and they are suffering tremendously. That really gives me the heebie-jeebies because I thought that the process of devotional service is such that slowly you are transcending the body and the bodily sensations, needs, desires, wants, and you're detaching yourself more and more and getting your spiritual body, even as you're practicing this, so that at the moment of death, you're not so caught up in what is happening to the body. But from what you said, it sounds like these devotees are suffering terribly. Why, if I may ask, why is that the case?
That's my observation of the situation. But because I know what is their ailments and how they're undergoing tremendous pain, but somehow or other, we have all of this medical apparatus to dull the pain, to give you anesthesias and various types of medicines. But this is my opinion. But there's others who transcend it completely. There's other, because I'm in touch with both of these persons, one directly and one indirectly. And I can see from my perspective in these cases that the suffering is quite severe. When the body breaks down, hey, and you're still alive, you can transcend it, but you have to really, really be strong in your spiritual practice. One of the devotees, he wrote that, he says, I wake up at midnight automatically and I start chanting. And he said one of his latest communiques, he said, and I was chanting so nicely and so perfectly that all my pain went. All my pain went. He's got internal bleeding plus many other breakdowns of the major organs in the body. And he's terminal. There's no chance that he's going to actually survive. And he's even said that, don't even try to help me with any kind of medications or remedies because I'm destined to leave very soon. And so he's tolerating the situation and staying fixed in his Krishna consciousness. But there is much physical pain. So it's individual how much they can tolerate, and at the same time go on with their spiritual practice. Depends on the power of the person. The other person is in a coma where there's practically no awareness of the external, and they're on all kinds of life support apparatus in order to keep their body going. And that will end very soon also. So when you look at it and you hear about it, all you can perceive is, yeah, they're going through this. Because when you accept pain, you're actually what we're doing, you're destroying your whatever bad karma or whatever karma you have left. That's why it says that devotees don't usually take any kind of medications to dull the pain, because if they go through the pain, then they purify themselves through that method of accepting the pain. But in some cases, it becomes so unbearable that they have to accept some kind of medications so they can be free from the suffering. This is all, we're talking about the body now. So if you're challenging that precept, then you're wrong. There's no sense of trying to challenge that, because in some cases it's very, very painful. In some cases, the person is very strong and can transcend the pain, although the pain is still there. But what I'm pointing out is living in this body is not a nice program. It's not a nice program.
Mataji, do you have any more comments or further question?
I'm just thinking about Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, who was in such severe pain, but he was saying it doesn't get any better than this. But of course, he was a very powerful spiritual personality who had done so many wonderful things for Prabhupada and gave that example. So, what
Well,
of, you know,
you're referring to a particular time period when he was undergoing pain. So at that time, he was hearing Chaitanya Charitamrita and entering into the mood of the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. At that time, he said it didn't get any better than this. Doesn't mean that he was feeling like this throughout his struggle. He struggled for a year.
right, right. This material body is such a bad, anyway, we make the best use of a bad bargain, no, Maharaj?
Yeah, but it doesn't mean everyone has to go through it. Just chant Hare Krishna, dance in ecstasy, jump in kirtan, and then you jump so high in kirtan that when you go up, you don't come down again, and you're back in the spiritual world. So you can actually leave in a very nice way too, in the middle of kirtan.
That would be wonderful, Maharaj.
Gaur Govinda Maharaj, he was in Mayapur. It was on the appearance day of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. The year was 1996. I was personally there. And he was surrounded by a group of devotees in one room. And he was narrating the pastimes of Lord Jagannath. And he became so absorbed in speaking of Jagannath that he went into a trance and became silent, closed his eyes. Everything stopped. All the devotees who were sitting in front of him were just waiting for him to come back. He didn't come back. He just went into trance and left, simply narrating Jagannath's pastimes. That's love. So if your love for Krishna becomes so unbearable that you can't live with Krishna even for a millisecond, then Krishna will take you back at that point. If you still have some desire to live in this world, then you have to continue until you get to that point where the pain of separation from Krishna is so unbearable that all you want to do is leave the body and go back to the spiritual world. And Krishna is there. But that's pure love. And that's available for each and every soul. Because that's the nature of each and every soul.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Rishabhanu Prabhu, Kirtida Mataji, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, our Dandavat pranams, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. I think for our age, we have been through all the ashrams without going through proper, let's say, the way scriptures say. But here we are where we are, with an age where we have children and grandchildren, and on the path of Krishna consciousness in your shelter. So you gave a very informative, very important, and a very thought-provoking class today, Maharaj. We fortunately have health which we manage, and on the path of Krishna consciousness, although I would love to do much more. And at the aim is certainly to go back to Godhead. We live together because of convenience, support, and care of each other. But in such circumstances, there is no question of sex. It's not important, but although you get surrounded by stimulants, but we tend to ignore it. What would be your guidance? Because I don't know how much time we have ahead. We are beginners, and we want to go deeper into process to come out of this cycle of birth and death. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, that's a personal thing, and I won't give any personal instructions in a public forum. But you can talk to me in a more private way, and we can discuss the situation. But go on the way you are, and I think one of your plans is to move your location closer to the temple.
Yes.
And that's a big move. And then you can spend more time at the temple, also take up some services, and that will increase the quality of your spiritual practice, and also the association that will support that. Well, that's a big move. I think you should work on that one, make it happen.
Thank you very much. I'm very grateful that you have offered us this personal session advice. And quite frankly, it is on my mind, and it's a question of when, if not sooner, to downsize, to simplify life, and to be closer to manner, to serve. Let Krishna fulfill our desires, and we will seek your guidance privately. Hare Krishna.
Good.
Thank you.
Good. Hare Krishna. Best wishes.
Thank you, Maharaj. Sonal Mataji.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my obeisances to all the devotees, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Maharaj, it is said that if we don't finish our devotional service, if we don't attain the purification of devotional service, either we take birth in a devotee family or we may go to the higher planets to finish the credits of our devotional service, and then we have to start back again. So, what shall we do not to fall into the second category? Because if that happens, then it may just take away this golden chance of coming back and getting the association of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's devotional guidance.
Well, to achieve the higher planets, you have to aspire to go to the higher planets. So don't aspire to go to higher planets. Therefore, a devotee aspires to take birth life after life in the family of devotees. That you can aspire for. And not think of terms of, well, I've achieved so much in devotional service. I have so many pious credits. I want to go to the higher planets and enjoy sense gratification on a higher level. Devotees don't think like that. There's that verse I brought it up once, by Prabodhananda Saraswati, that he says, what is it? Akash pushpayate. Akash means sky. Pushpa means flowers. Flowers in the sky. Flowers don't grow in the sky. So the pleasure of the higher planets is like sky flowers. So he says, one who is fixed in the service of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu rejects liberation, rejects the idea of going to the higher planets, and simply wants to engage life after life until they reach perfection in devotional service. So we can aspire for that.
So Maharaj, so to put it into practical terms, we should engage in service. So then only we will develop that mindset to serve all the time.
Yeah, and you won't get awarded the higher planets unless you want to go to a higher planet simply by your spiritual or your pious activities. I mean, Prabhupada said, many of my disciples will achieve Swargaloka, the higher planets. That means they have done so much devotional service, but as they get older, they get lax and they take it easy and they try to just kind of, they don't stay fixed in their process of devotional service. So they will get the higher planets automatically because of the power of their devotional service. But because they gave up the process or minimized the process, then they will get some concession. But one who stays fixed in devotional service to the end will get another birth to come back and finish up if they don't make it in the present life. That's mentioned. Suchinam Simatam Gehe Yoga Brasta Prajayate. It's a verse in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Yeah, don't worry about the higher planets. Just to think about it scares me. My God, what am I going to do there? Float around in some airplane and just look at all the beautiful girls there. That's all.
Thank you, Maharaj. Silpesh Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Guru Maharaj, when devotees are very sick, like the ones you spoke of, what should we do for them? Should we pray for them? What is the best thing we could do as devotees?
What's the question again? There was some noise in my background here. I didn't hear it all.
Sorry, Guru Maharaj. When devotees are very sick, like the ones you mentioned, what can we as devotees do for them? Can we pray for them or should we chant for them?
Pray. My dear Lord, please give them your special mercy. You can't ask the Lord to take them back to the spiritual world. If you do, you can ask them in in a way, you can ask the Lord, my dear Lord, if you so desire, please take them back to your personal abode. You can pray like that, but you can't demand that or even project that, saying, "Oh, well, now you're going back to the spiritual world." Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? But you can say to the Lord, "My dear Lord, they've done so much wonderful service for you, so give them your special mercy. If you so desire, take them back." If you so desire, always remember that phrase. That you can pray for. But generally, we pray for, my dear Lord, just please give them your mercy. You can say even your special mercy. But sincerely pray. When prayers are done sincerely, they bring about the benefit of the prayer. We can offer prayers in a very perfunctory way, in a mechanical way, in a dutifully way. But see, when you offer prayers seriously from the heart, those prayers have power.
Guru Maharaj, how do we get into that mood where we're really praying from our heart and not just trying to make something up?
When you understand the benefits of going back home, back to God, or when you understand the benefits of spiritual life, and you understand the horrors of material life. If you still think this place is nice, you can't pray like that. You still think there's something here that is meant for your enjoyment, you can't pray like that. You have to be free. You have to understand, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Dukalayam asasratam. This place is temporary and it's miserable. He uses the word miserable, nothing less. It's a miserable place because it locks the soul into an artificial lifestyle, which is contrary to the soul's actual welfare and happiness. So we have to be convinced there's no happiness in this material world. Not just theoretically, but convinced. That doesn't mean we don't do our duties, but we don't aspire for happiness on the material level. We aspire for happiness through our spiritual practice, not through the material responsibilities we may have. Material world becomes dutiful, spiritual life becomes pleasurable. Not that material life becomes pleasurable and spiritual life becomes dutiful. No, the other way around.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, I'm still here. I'm just going to put some illumination in my room because I'm now surrounded by darkness. The sun is gone.
Yes, Maharaj. Sonal Mataji, I'll take your question later. Vrindavanath Prabhu, please go ahead.
Thanks, Mataji. Should I wait for Maharaj or should I continue?
Oh, you can talk. Maharaj will have.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So Maharaj, my question is that today is Narottam Das Thakur appearance day. And like 6 Goswamis and other elevated saints in our parampara, he was also a Manjari. He was, if I'm not wrong, he was Chamak Manjari. Yeah?
Champak Manjari, yeah.
So most of the Goswamis in our parampara are Manjari from Radharani, who was serving Radharani. While in Gaur Lila, whoever was Krishna Sakha, they came as normal, not like as elevated Goswami or something, like whether they're Kolavich Shridhar or Aviram Gopal Thakur, like most of the Krishna Sakha came in that form. Is there something, Maharaj, we should infer from this?
No, they're manifesting their eternal mood in the spiritual, in the material world in service to Krishna, that's all. They're still somewhat connected to their eternal nature, but they perform in this world. But it's not 100%. Murari Gupta was Hanuman, but he became a physician in Lord Chaitanya's entourage. So yeah. But the ones that, Krishna Das Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, Rupa Goswami, Jiva Goswami, most of them are all manjaris. Because what did they do? They wrote about Krishna's leelas in the spiritual world, in Vrindavan mostly. Abhiram Saka was Sridham,
Yeah.
the cowherd boy, and the
Sundarananda was
three brothers,
Sudama.
Madhava Ghosh, Vasudev Ghosh, and Govinda Ghosh, who were kirtan singers in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, were three gopis in Krishna's pastimes. So yeah, a lot of them will take on their similar nature as they manifest their pastimes in the material world.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you very much.
Yeah, but it's not 100%. As I use the example of Murari Gupta, there's a book called Gora Gonadesh Deepika. You're familiar with that, right? Gora Gonadesh Deepika.
Yes,
by-
Maharaj, you mentioned earlier. Yeah.
What is it? What's his name? Ananda Vrindavan, I think his name is. And he writes who's who. Who's who? Who's in Krishna Lila and who appeared in Krishna Lila again in Gaur Lila. You can see who's who. It's called, Gaur Gonadesh Deepika. There's another book called Radha Desh Deepika also. And that's about the cowherd boys and the gopis and their moods of service in the spiritual world as they manifest themselves in this material world. Like I mentioned, Prabodhananda Saraswati. Who's Prabodhananda Saraswati? He's a gopi. Who is Vakreshwar Pandit? He's Tanga Vidya, one of the Sakis. If you like, I can read a few.
Hare Krishna. Maharaj suddenly got disconnected. He's joining back.
He is there, I can see.
Yeah.
he's-
So Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami is Kasturi Manjari. Gopal Bhatta Goswami is Guna Manjari. So most of the main ones are Manjaris. Rangadevi, Govinda Ghosh in Gaur Lila. Champakalata is Shivananda Sain in Gaur Lila. Sudevi is Vasudev Ghosh, Lalita, the very close Saki of friend of Krishna, is Sarup Damodar Goswami in Gaur Lila, like that. So they all come to assist the Lord in his pastimes in the material world.
Thank you, Maharaj. Anything special we should try to do for Narottam Das Thakur, or we should try to?
You can listen to my class. I gave a class this morning.
Okay.
I was going to give a class tonight, but I decided to go with the Bhagavatam instead. But if you like, I can tell one pastime.
Please, Maharaj.
Yes, Maharaj. Yeah, please.
Okay, well, Sonal had her hand up, right? She
Yeah.
wants to.
Yeah. Sonal Mataji.
Yeah, Maharaj, please finish because the question is going back to the prayers. I'll ask towards the end or I'll ask tomorrow. That's fine.
You can ask tonight, and then I'll speak the thing.
Yeah. Please go ahead, Mataji.
Yeah, Maharaj, it's again related to Shilpesh Prabhu's question of prayers. So I'm always a bit afraid to pray for somebody else, even if it's my children or my family members, because I don't know whether that prayer is going to be useful for them or not. So how shall we pray if we have to?
Yeah, that's a very, very important statement you made. Because we really don't know how to pray for someone. Because we don't really know what would be the best thing that we could pray for. So we can always pray, my dear Lord, please give this person your mercy if you so desire. We leave it up to Krishna to give his mercy in a way that he feels that they deserve it. And we don't ask anything specific. If you avoid the specifics, then you can pray in general. That's nice. My dear Lord, please give your mercy to this person. That's all. So you're not asking for anything specific. When you get into specifics, then you might, just like there was one, he was a Christian in a monastery, and he was considered by the monastery to be the most advanced of all the brothers in the monastery. But what was his service? He was a pot washer. And people would write letters to him asking for his prayers for their relatives who were sick. He said, I can't do that because God has put them in that situation for a particular reason. So I don't want to interfere with the work of God. So when Prabhupada got really sick in 1974 and again in 77, he said, if you want to pray for me, then you should say, my dear Lord, please cure my spiritual master if you so desire. So that line, if you so desire, will apply to a general prayer. So in that prayer, you can make a specific statement. Please give this person this if you so desire. But then when you make a general prayer, you say, my dear Lord, just give him your mercy. There's two ways you can pray. More specific, with a personal desire, leaving the desire up to the Lord, or generally, just asking for the Lord's mercy upon that soul.
Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Yeah. I can send you this text that there's 10 different types of ways to pray. If people are interested, it's
Yes,
10
Maharaj.
10 types of prayers. I'll send it to Srimati. She can just send it out.
Yes, Maharaj. Yeah, thank you for asking this question, Mataji. Even I was thinking the same. Like Krishna has put them into that situation, and how we should pray to Krishna, like please get out. As Maharaj was saying, that we should not interfere in the work of Krishna. So, yeah, thank you. Now I understand. Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Narottam Das Thakur, I spoke about more than an hour this morning on his Leelas, about an hour and a half almost. It's quite extensive. I can talk about his disappearance, Leela. Although his appearance is today, his disappearance, Leela, is so beautiful that it's just hard to understand. He, as you mentioned, he's Champak Manjari. That means he does personal service for Radharani in the spiritual world. The Manjaris, they serve Radharani in so many different ways, making arrangements for them to meet Krishna, assisting Radharani in getting dressed and putting on various types of clothes and ornaments that will be pleasing to Krishna. And it's a very detailed form of service in a very personal way. The Sakis, Krishna's girlfriends, they don't do personal service so much for Radharani, but they also serve Radharani in her relationship with Krishna. They're more friends. The Manjaris are more like personal assistants. So, who was Narottam Das Thakur? Lord Chaitanya, this was in the year 1534, which was the same year that Lord Chaitanya disappeared from the planet. And he was walking towards Vrindavan, but then he changed direction. He was with Nityananda. And he came to the area known as Bangladesh, and there was one river there. It's called the Padma River. Lord Chaitanya started to speak very ecstatically, and he started calling out Narottam, Narottam, over and over again, Narottam, in a very joyful but very loud way. Nityananda was thinking, who is this Narottam? He speaks about him, now he's calling. Then Lord Chaitanya took his bath in the Padma River, and when he entered the river overflowed her banks. The waters went beyond the banks. Padma River appeared to him in her personal form and offered her respects. The Lord said to Padma, soon there will be a great personality who will come, and he will come into your waters and bathe. I am leaving my prema bhakti, my love for Krishna, in your waters. When he comes and bathes, you give him that love. She says to him, how will I know who that person is? And Lord Chaitanya says, when he enters into your river, your banks will also overflow. So the story of him growing up is really interesting. He was a son of a Kayasta. He was born in a Kshatriya family. His father was a king. His name was Krishnananda Dutt. His mother was Narayani. They were rulers in a certain area, in an area called Ketari Gram. And he grew up in a somewhat of an affluent family. When he was born, the astrologer saw all of the birth signs on his body and could understand that this person was a great soul. So he gave him the name Narottam. Narottam means the best of all humans. Uttam means the best, and Nara means man. So he got the name Narottam. And he was such a beautiful boy that it was described that people would just look at him and see him as a baby. He was just a baby. He was so beautiful that they would enchant people just by looking at him. Then the grain giving ceremony came after 6 months. His father got very festive and invited people from all over the area to come and witness the ceremony of his child accepting the first grains. So many sadhus came, Dignitaries came from the area. His father was the king and others, and a very elaborate arrangement was made for the ceremony. Then when it came time to give him the grains, they brought the spoon with the sweet rice, and they tried to feed him, but he turned his head in the other direction. He wouldn't eat it. And then they went around to the other side to put it in his mouth, and he turned the other way. As hard as they tried, he wouldn't eat. And his father, mother, everyone was thinking, oh, this is so inauspicious. Child is not accepting. But there was one sadhu there. He said he's not eating because it's not Mahaprasadam. So go cook and offer the sweet rice to your deity and then bring it back. So they did and came back. And then when they brought him the sweet rice and tried to feed him, he immediately ate it. He was only 6 months old. So then it was understood that he should only take Mahaprasadam his whole life, which he did. He never ate ordinary prasadam, only Mahaprasadam. This was a nice story. As he was growing up, many sadhus came to meet him, and they would speak to him about Lord Chaitanya, about Jiva Goswami, especially about Srinivasacharya. He became very attracted to hearing about Srinivasacharya and developed a great desire to associate with Srinivasacharya. So one day, his mother and his parents, his father was always worried that he was going to leave. So they would arrange for him to not leave, just like Raghunath Das Goswami, there were guards around him. So one day his father had to go away on some business call, and his mother was a little inattentive. He tricked his mother and he left. He was about 12 years old, and he wanted to go wandering towards Vrindavan. As he was going, he somehow went in the direction of the Padma River. He came to the Padma River, and actually what happened was left out a part. Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, and Advaita appeared to him in 3 different times in a dream, saying, go to Vrindavan. So on their request, so when he came to the Padma River, he decided to take bath. And so as soon as he went into the river overflowed her banks. And therefore, the personification of Padma River, she gave him what Lord Chaitanya left in the river, which was his Krishna Prem. So his body was darkish, but when he bathed in the river, his body changed to the color of golden. So he took on the same color as Lord Chaitanya, simply by bathing in his river, which was the Krishna Prema that Lord Chaitanya carried within his heart. So that's a beautiful story. And then he went on to different places he went to Vrindavan, to Jagannath Puri, to Ekachakra, meeting all the great souls. And they all had heard about this great personality named Narottam. They all welcomed him and met him and spent time with him. His disappearance, he preached and he made many brahmanas into devotees, which was causing some social criticism in the area because he came from a Kayasta family, which is considered lower caste. And now he was giving Diksha initiation, Vaishnava initiation to Brahmins, who are the highest caste. And this was causing problems. But one Ganga Narayan, what was his name? Ganga Narayan Chakravarti? No. Ganga Narayan Chakravarti. He was one of the leading Brahmins in the area. He took initiation from Narottam Das. And that really frustrated many of the Brahmins. They went to the king saying, this Narottam is ruining our whole culture. He's a Sudra. He's no better than a Sudra, Kayasta. Kayastas are either Kshatriyas or Sudras. But he was in the Kshatriya Dharma or Kshatriya Varna. So they said, we have to stop this Narottam. So the king agreed, and so what we can do. So the Brahmin says, we'll have to defeat him. And there was one Kaviraj, his name was Rupa Raghunath Kaviraj. So they called upon him, you come and you face Narottam and you defeat him in philosophy. So he agreed. So it was an entourage with the king and many of these Brahmins, Rupa Kaviraj. So the devotees under Narottam, they heard about what was about to happen. So Ganganarayan Das and one other Krishna, was his Krishna Nam, no, Ramakrishna. They were disciples of Narottam. They went to the path where the king and the Brahmins were going to travel, and they set up two shops. One was a pot shop, one became a potwala, and the other one became a bedawala. And they were selling wares along the path. So when the king and all the Brahmins came, they thought, oh, let's stop and get some pots and bedal. So when they went to buy, and was these two devotees that were running the shops, they start speaking in pure, perfect Sanskrit. And the Brahmins were shocked. The king was amazed. These are ordinary potwalas and bedalwalas, and they're speaking in Sanskrit. And they asked him, well, who are you? Well, we are disciples of Narottam. And so these two bedalwalas, they challenged Rupa Raghunath to a debate, and he lost. The Brahmins were defeated. The king said, you think you're going to go on to defeat Narottam when you can't even defeat his disciples? So they turned around and left, and that was a great victory for the Vaishnavas. These are some of the pastimes. So at one point, we sing this song in our temples. What is it? Doya Kola Srinivasacharya. What is it? What's that last line? Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Doya Kola Mohore Toma Bina Ke Dayalu Jagat Samsara Ha Ha Prabhu Shri Acharya Prabhu Srinivas Ramachandra Sangamage Narottam Das. So Narottam Das, he writes this song. He's feeling separation from Srinivasacharya and his best friend, Ramachandra Kaviraj. So they were close, very close. It says there was like two souls in one body. So when Ramachandra Kaviraj left the planet, this broke the heart of Narottam, and he went into seclusion for a while, mourning the disappearance of his very dear friend. And then, after some time, he came back out. And then, little but later, Srinivasacharya left the planet, and that was too much for Narottam. He decided he was going to leave also. So he made preparations to leave, and he left his body. And they took his body and they brought it to a ceremony for the last rites where they were going to speak the glories of Narottam and then take his body and put it on the funeral pyre. So while they were having this eulogy, people were speaking. Some of the Brahmins who were against Narottam, they came and they started speaking badly during this ceremony about Narottam. Oh, who is he? He's just a low-class person. Now he's getting some work. And so they were speaking badly. And it became so inauspicious because it's understood that when a person is leaving the body, if people speak bad about it, that person, that will affect the whole atmosphere. And so Ganganarayan Chakravarti was there and he heard them. And he became so unhappy. So he prayed to Narottam, who was already left his body. He was laying there. He said, Narottam, 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 please save us. They're talking so inauspiciously. And at one point, all of a sudden, on his body appeared a golden Brahman thread. And then he sat up and came back to life in the midst of this disappearance ceremony. When these Brahmins saw that, they immediately surrendered and took shelter of the devotees of Narottam. Then Narottam stayed around for a little while, but then his separation was too much. Then he decided to leave. So he called Ganganarayan Chakravarti and was it Ramakrishna? And he said, come with me. And he said, we're going to the Ganga, and I want you to offer some seva. So the three of them walked into the Ganga, and Narottam said, they had a pot, and they had a little clay pot. Narottam said, now you take this Ganga water, and you pour it on my body. And whatever you do, you don't stop. Whatever you see, you don't stop. Please just continue. So they were thinking, all right, this is the instructions of our spiritual master. So they were pouring water on his body that was exposed. And as the water was touching his body, that part of the body was disappearing and turning into milk. So as they were pouring water on his body, each part of the body was hit by the Ganga water by bathing, was actually dissolving and turning into milk until his whole body was completely gone. It just merged into the Ganga as milk and he was gone. That's how he left the world. So who is this Narottam? So it's understood, at least from the perspective of Shastra, that his service to Radharani in the spiritual world is to cook hot milk for Srimati Radharani. So that's his personal service. That's one of his services, is to cook hot milk for Srimati Radharani. She likes hot milk. So this is mentioned in Narottam Vilas. It's a beautiful book called Narottam Vilas. It's written by Narahari Chakravarti, and it describes the whole life of Narottam. My god sister, Sitala, I think you know her, Sri Devi, right? Sitala, the wife of Harisari. She wrote a book. She wrote an account of that. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
It is so beautiful. It's so perfect. I recommend you get that book, Narottam Vilas, and read it, and you can go deep into the mood of this great soul. When we hear about these great souls, we actually develop we develop the desires to become like them. And by their mercy, we can also develop some of their characteristics, some of their bhakti. So it's very auspicious to speak about them, to hear about them, to remember them, to worship them, just as much as it is to worship the Supreme Lord.
Mm-hmm.
So I just touched a small drop in the ocean of the life of Narottam Das. There's so much more.
Thank you,
It's
Maharaj.
all,
Thank you very much.
yeah. Thank you for reminding me. I wanted to speak about him tonight, but so
Yes,
we got a chance.
I was about to ask you in the end. Thanks, Vrindavanath Prabhu, for asking. So Maharaj, we are almost, we are at 2 hours mark. So should we
2
continue?
hours into the class, yeah.
Yeah.
If you like, we can chant Hare Krishna.
Yes, Maharaj. But I have to go, Maharaj. It's like I have some work. So can anybody take over from here? That would be great.
Yeah, just shift it to either Vrindavan Nath or Sri Devi, either one,
Yeah.
wherever you want.
I can be on for about half an hour, Guru Maharaj, if that's okay.
I can't stay on that long. I'll be on about the same time.
Yeah. Thank you, Mataji. So Maharaj, I just want to announce tomorrow's class. Tomorrow's class is with Bhakti Sangha devotees, and the verses are 7th canto, 15th chapter, verses 16 to 18. 16,
Let me
17.
write that down. 7, 15, 16 through 18.
Yes, Maharaj. And the time is
Okay.
12:20 p.m. UK time, which is 50 minutes later than our regular time.
And that's 5:50
Yeah.
Indian time.
In time. Yes.
That,
Thank you so
okay.
much. That's such a wonderful discussion. Thank you so much, dear devotees, for such a nice question answer session. We'll start Japa now.
Okay, so give me a second here and I'll be